For more than 30 years, he lived for his children. Every dollar he earned, every hour of backbreaking work, every sacrifice was for them. He gave up vacations, hobbies, and even his own retirement dreams just to see his son and daughter succeed. He even paid the mortgage on his son's home in secret, never asking for thanks, never asking for anything in return. But when Christmas came, the day families are supposed to come together, his children gave him the cruelest gift of all. They told him not to come. They told him he was too much, too embarrassing, too complicated. They laughed, they dismissed, and they forgot the man who built their lives brick by brick. What they didn't know was that the quiet old man they cast aside held their entire world in his hands. And with a single decision, one quiet signature, he began unraveling everything they thought was secure. Their home, their comfort, their future, it all slipped away. This is the story of how one father, betrayed and humiliated by his own blood, gave his children a Christmas they would never forget, and a gift they could never return. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments. The snow had started early that year. By mid-December, our small town in upstate New York was already blanketed in white. The trees wore heavy coats of ice, the rooftops glistened, and the streets hummed with the muted crunch of tires over snow. From the window of my old Ford pickup, I could see kids building forts along the sidewalk, throwing snowballs that burst into sparkling clouds under the weak winter sun. I should have felt joy. I should have been humming along to the faint Christmas music on the radio. Instead, I just gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles pale, my heart heavy. I had just left the hardware store, carrying home the boxes of lights and decorations I bought on sale. My late wife, Linda, had always loved Christmas. She'd start planning in September, stockpiling ribbons, ornaments, and recipes. Even after she passed 10 years ago, I tried to keep the tradition alive. For her, for the kids. But this year, something felt wrong. The house didn't hum with the same warmth it used to. The air didn't smell of cinnamon and sugar cookies. And my children, Ethan and Jessica, my whole world, had been distant. I'm Michael Turner, 62 years old, retired electrician, and if I'm being honest, a man who looks older than his years. Hard work does that to you. I never had much. My father left when I was 10, and I swore I'd never do the same to my family. When Ethan was born, I worked nights, crawling through attics, sweating in basements, repairing wiring for people who barely remembered my name. When Jessica came along 4 years later, I picked up double shifts just to keep up with bills. Vacations? None. New cars? Never. But I made sure my kids had everything. When Linda got sick with breast cancer, I sold the boat I'd spent years saving for to cover her treatments. After she passed, I gave up the idea of retirement adventures. I poured everything into Ethan and Jessica's futures. College tuition, rent money, down payments. I even covered Ethan's mortgage quietly after his marriage. He thought he was managing well, but behind the scenes I was paying thousands every month. I told myself it didn't matter if I was tired, if I was lonely, if I was broke, as long as my kids were happy. It was December 20th when my world shifted. I had just finished stringing lights across the porch. The cold bit into my fingers as I tugged the wires into place. My breath fogged the air. The house glowed faintly as I tested the bulbs, little sparks of color in the snowy night. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. My heart lifted. "Jess!" "Hey, sweetheart," I answered, already smiling. There was a pause on the other end, then her voice, hesitant, cautious. "Hi, Dad. So, about Christmas dinner." "I've got the turkey ready," I said quickly. "Brined it just like your mom used to. And I found the old angel for the tree. Thought we could put it up together like old times." Silence. A long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, she sighed. "Dad, listen. Ethan and I were talking, and we think maybe it's better if you don't come this year." My smile faded. "What?" "It's just Ethan's hosting, and his wife invited her parents. They want, something quiet, formal. And you can be a little what?" I asked, my voice low. "A little much, Dad. You tell the same stories. You drink too much eggnog. I cut her off. My chest felt tight. "I'm your father, Jess. It's Christmas." "You're saying I don't belong?" Her voice hardened. Dad, don't make this harder, please. Just stay home this year. We'll drop by after the holidays. And then she hung up. The silence on the line burned hotter than any fire. I stood there, the phone cold in my hand, the snow crunching under my boots. My chest ached. Maybe Ethan would call, I thought. Maybe he'd tell me Jess didn't mean it. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Ethan this time. Relief surged through me as I answered, but his words cut just as deep. Dad, Jess probably already told you. Look, it's nothing personal. We just need space. Don't come by. Merry Christmas. I froze. Ethan, I've done everything for you, for both of you. And you're saying I can't sit at the table on Christmas. Dad, don't start. It's better this way. You'll understand someday. And with that, he hung up. No, I love you. No hesitation. Just cold dismissal. I sat in my recliner staring at the tree. The ornaments Linda had collected, angels, snowmen, baby photos, glittered faintly. My throat tightened as I remembered Jessica at 5 years old, tearing open her presents in her pajamas. Ethan at 8, running through the house shouting about Santa. All the Christmas mornings I had stayed up late, working extra hours, just so they could have everything they dreamed of. And now, I was nothing, a burden, an embarrassment, disposable. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. The burn didn't touch the ache in my chest. Hours passed. The house sat quiet. Too quiet. Finally, I stood. My legs carried me to the study. I pulled open a drawer, revealing a thick envelope. Inside were the mortgage papers for Ethan's house. For years, I had been paying them, quietly, faithfully. Without me, Ethan wouldn't even have the roof over his head. He had no idea. As I stared at the papers, something inside me shifted. The warmth, the hope, the fatherly devotion. I felt it harden into something else, something colder. If they thought I was disposable, maybe it was time they learned what life without me really looked like. December 24th. The town glowed with Christmas cheer. Carolers sang outside the diner. Children dragged sleds across the snow. Families bustled past me with bags of gifts, laughter trailing behind them. I walked into the bank. The air inside was warm, the faint scent of pine from a decorated tree in the corner. A teller smiled politely. Mr. Turner, how can we help you today? I slid the envelope across the counter. I'd like to cancel these automatic payments. The teller blinked, surprised. Sir, are you sure? That will lapse immediately. Your son's account. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. She hesitated, then nodded. The stamp hit the paper. Final. As I walked back into the snowy streets, the cold air filled my lungs. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I woke to silence. No phone calls. No messages. Not even a Merry Christmas. I made myself coffee, the bitter steam rising in the dim kitchen. Outside, snow fell in thick sheets, blanketing the world in white. I sat by the window, watching. Across town, I knew Ethan's house was filled with noise, music, laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses. I imagined them toasting, unwrapping gifts, enjoying the life I had built for them brick by brick, dollar by dollar, and I whispered to myself, Merry Christmas, kids, it didn't take long. January 10th. My phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. I answered calmly. Dad, the bank says the mortgage hasn't been paid. Did something happen with the auto pay? I let the silence stretch before answering. I canceled it. His voice shot up. What? Why would you do that? Because you told me I wasn't family anymore, I said, my voice cold. Dad, don't be ridiculous. This is serious. They'll foreclose. You'll figure it out. After all, you wanted space. And then, for the first time, I hung up on him. The silence afterward was sweeter than any carol I'd ever heard. When I hung up on Ethan that cold January morning, my hands didn't even shake. For years, I had given everything, my time, my money, my strength, and they tossed me aside like yesterday's trash. Now it was their turn to feel what life was like without me holding it together. The silence in my little house was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the heater. Outside, snow whipped against the windows. I poured another cup of coffee and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in decades, I felt calm. I knew Ethan, he'd scramble. He'd panic. He'd yell, but he wouldn't know the first thing about managing without me. 2 days later, he was back on the line. This time his voice was shaky, frantic. "Dad, please! I don't have that kind of money. You know how tight things are right now. The twins' daycare, the car payments, the credit cards." I didn't respond right away. I let him drown in the silence. Finally, I said, "Son, I managed with less than nothing. I raised you with holes in my boots and $3 in my wallet. You'll figure it out." He exploded. "This isn't fair. You can't just pull the rug out from under me like this." I almost laughed. Fair? Where was fair when they told me not to come to Christmas? Where was fair when I buried their mother alone and they rushed back to college 2 days later? "I already did," I said, and hung up again. By the end of January, Jessica came storming into my house without even knocking. She stood in the doorway, her expensive coat dusted with snow, her jaw tight. "Dad, what the hell are you doing to Ethan?" I raised an eyebrow. "Nice to see you too, Jess." She marched across the room. "He's drowning, Dad. Do you have any idea what foreclosure will do to his credit? To his kids? To his marriage? Do you have any idea what it felt like?" I said, my voice rising for the first time. "To be told I wasn't welcome at Christmas? By my own children." She froze. For a moment, her anger cracked. I saw guilt flash across her face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Dad, we didn't mean it like that. We just wanted a quiet holiday. You make things complicated." "Complicated?" I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "I paid for your education. I paid for Ethan's house. I gave you everything I had. And I'm complicated?" She swallowed hard. "You can't just ruin his life to prove a point." I sat back. "I'm not ruining his life. I'm just stepping out of it. Isn't that what you wanted?" She opened her mouth and closed it. Her eyes darted away. For the first time in her life, Jessica had no comeback. By February, the foreclosure notices started piling up. Ethan called every day, his voice more desperate, more broken. "Dad, please. I'll pay you back. Just help me one more time." But I had heard those words too many times before. One more time had turned into a lifetime of sacrifices. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just told him the truth. "No, Ethan. The bank owns your house now. Not me. Not you. You'll have to figure it out." And then slowly I began to hear the cracks in his perfect suburban life. His wife yelling in the background. His kids crying. The stress bleeding through every word he spoke. For the first time, I felt no guilt. Only justice. Small towns are cruel with secrets. By March, whispers began to spread. People noticed Ethan's car repossessed from the driveway. They noticed the for sale sign on his lawn. They noticed Jessica withdrawing from social circles, her perfect Instagram life suddenly quiet. Neighbors started asking me questions. I only smiled. Kids grow up, I'd say. They have to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. But inside, I savored every rumor. Every whisper was a reminder that the children who once dismissed me were now facing the consequences of their own arrogance. One night in April, I got a call, not from Ethan or Jessica, but from a banker. "Mr. Turner, I thought you should know. Ethan's been applying for loans. He listed you as a reference." I chuckled bitterly. "Of course he did." The banker hesitated. "We also ran his financial records. He's been hiding significant credit card debt. Over $60,000, my eyes widened. All this time, Ethan had been living not just off my money, but off borrowed money he could never repay. And Jessica? I later learned she had been funneling part of her paycheck into covering Ethan's shortfalls. She wasn't helping out of kindness. She was trapped in his mess. The perfect children I sacrificed everything for were nothing but parasites, bleeding me dry while smiling in my face. By May, Ethan showed up at my door. He looked nothing like the polished son I once admired. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "Dad, please," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We lost the house. We're staying with Sarah's parents. I can't do this anymore. I need you." I stared at him for a long moment. My son, my blood. The boy I carried on my shoulders, the man I paid into adulthood, and all I saw was a stranger. "Where were you when I needed you?" I asked softly. "When I buried your mother alone? When I sat in that house every Christmas waiting for you to call? Where were you when I was nothing but an old man you wanted to forget?" Tears filled his eyes. "Dad, I'm sorry. We didn't mean..." You meant every word, I cut him off. You said I was complicated, embarrassing, not family. Now you know what life without me feels like. He fell silent. And for once, he didn't argue. Summer came. The foreclosure finalized. Ethan's name was blacklisted with the banks. Jessica's credit was ruined from co-signing. Their picture-perfect lives were shattered beyond repair, but I wasn't done. In June, I visited my lawyer. I rewrote my will. Every cent I had left, every asset, every possession, it would bypass Ethan and Jessica. Instead, I donated it to the local children's hospital, where kids with real struggles fought for every breath, every smile. Kids who would appreciate love instead of spitting on it. When I walked out of that office, I felt lighter than I had in years. The next Christmas, I sat alone again. But this time, the silence didn't sting. The tree sparkled in the corner. The house smelled of pine. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and raised it toward the empty chairs. "Merry Christmas, Linda," I whispered to my late wife's photo. I finally taught them the lesson they needed. And though my children never called, never showed up, I smiled, because some gifts, the ones wrapped in hard truths and cold justice, can never be returned. If you liked my story, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with as many people as possible. Thanks for watching.